back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And for all right, and we are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And for the final
yourself in the loop of everything football on the Golden State Media Concepts Football Podcast. The latest news on and off the field, be it college football, Big Ten, SEC, Big 12, Pac-12, ACC to the NFL. We've got you covered. Listen to the Golden State Media Concepts Football Podcast.
And welcome everybody to another edition of the GSMC Football Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. As always, I'm your host, Kenneth, and it's great to have you guys here on this Tuesday, May 7th. We have a lot to talk about on the show today. Before I get into that, just want to remind you guys, as always, to tip or donate and get your comments recognized, make sure to go to the following link. That is gsmcpodcast.net. Again, that really helps the show, makes the show more interactive between myself, the host, and you guys, the viewers. Again, that is gsmcpodcast.net. And as always, it is displayed on the ticker at the bottom of the show segment down below. So with that being said, let's get into what we are going to talk about for today. So we're going to start off the show, talk about Joe Burrow. Video of him throwing passes came out on social media. So talk about that and where he's at with his rehab. And it seems like he's going to be good to go once we get to the start of the regular season. So we'll get into all that in a second and talk about the Bengals and where they kind of fit amongst the teams in the AFC with Joe Burrow being healthy. Then in the second part of the show, we'll talk about should Mike Tomlin be on the hot seat, because there was an article talking about a former offensive lineman, Willie Colon of the Steelers, coming out and basically saying that he should be on the hot seat because of the lack of recent playoff success that Mike Tomlin has had. So we'll get into that as well. Then in the third part of the show, we'll talk about another article that I saw about Kirk Cousins and how he left Minnesota because they were looking to draft a quarterback in the NFL draft, and that's why he signed with Atlanta. So we'll get into that as well. And then in the final part of the show, we'll talk about the Browns and them having high expectations for Deshaun Watson, banking on him bouncing back in 2024. So, 3 out of the 4 segments are about AFC North teams. So this is kind of an AFC North show for today, if you will. So with that being said now, let's get into the first topic, which is talking about Joe Burrow and how he's looked in workouts so far. So he participated in throwing passes during Bengals offseason workouts. The video was posted by the Bengals social media team, showing Burrow throwing passes smoothly. Teammates observed Burrow's power and velocity in his throws, expressing confidence in his recovery. And Burrow's absence was felt during the remaining part of the 2023 season when he went down with the wrist injury. And his health really is the most important thing, because if he's not healthy, well, the Bengals, their playoff aspirations, their Super Bowl aspirations, well, they go out the window. And with Joe Burrow and him being healthy, the Bengals, they could go all the way to the Super Bowl. Now, where do they kind of fit amongst the teams in the AFC? Well, I still put the Chiefs at the top. And then after that, you have the Ravens, you got the Texans, the Bengals I would put there. I would say that's your top 4 right there, is those 4 teams. And, you got the Bills and the Dolphins. And if the Jets, if they play how they're supposed to and things go well for them, they're in that conversation for that number 5 spot. But right now, my top 4 in the AFC is you got, like I said, the Chiefs, the Ravens, the Texans, and the Bengals. Now, because I think I was going through rankings last week, I'd probably right now I put the Bengals ahead of the Texans. A healthy Joe Burrow, I'd put them ahead. But the Texans, they beat the Bengals last year. And now they got even better. So, but I would say that's my top 4. And then that 5 spot, it's kind of up for grabs at the moment. Got to see how the Bills are with their new receiving core, which I think the Bills are still going to be good. I don't know if I'm going to put them, as Super Bowl contenders at the moment. I mean, they still have Josh Allen, but I got to see how they play, once we get to the regular season. But I think they'll still be good. The Dolphins, the Jets. I think if the Jets are how they're supposed to be, I would rank the Jets ahead of the Bills and the Dolphins, and I'd put them in the top 5. I think it's between those 3 teams right now. And then you look at some other teams. I mean, I don't think the Colts are a top 5 team in the AFC, but I'd probably rank them a little bit lower than the teams I just mentioned. But I think with the healthy Anthony Richardson and Jonathan Taylor for a full year, the team's going to be good. They're going to be good. We'll see how Jacksonville bounces back. You look in the AFC West, the Chargers with Justin Herbert, but got to see how they are with their new receiving core. Now, you figure they're going to run the ball a little bit more because, they brought in the Ravens' backfield essentially with Gus Edwards and J.K. Dobbins. But, yeah, now I'm just kind of going, well, and you also have the Browns, who we'll talk about, the Steelers as well. I mean, those are just all, I don't think all those teams I just mentioned are, going to be in the top 5. But I think it's between the AFC East teams that I just said. They're fighting for that 5th spot. So, kind of went off on a tangent with all the teams. I was naming basically every team. But top 4, Bengals are in the top 4. And, well, the top 3. But that's what they are. That's the kind of team that they can be when their quarterback is healthy. And it's encouraging to hear that he's got the zip on his ball and, the passes are coming out clean. That's what you want to hear. Because that means that he's healthy and he's ready to roll. Now, you're hoping that he doesn't suffer a setback or, starts dealing with another injury. Because, had the calf injury before the year started, played through it, didn't play that well. But once he got over that, the Bengals started playing really well. And they looked like that team that made it to back-to-back AFC championship games. And if he's healthy, that team could definitely make it back to a championship game. And they've played in the Super Bowl too. Now, they didn't win, but they got there. And Joe Burrow is really, I've said it many times, he's the only quarterback left that has beaten Patrick Mahomes in the playoffs. The other one was a part of a roast the other night, which I think I'll touch upon at some point this week. I want to watch the whole thing. I did watch a chunk of it, but I didn't watch the entire thing. I tuned in once Peyton Manning came on. So I'm going to watch the whole thing, and then I will. It was 3 hours long. But I'll touch upon it at some point, and some of the things that were said. Not the inappropriate stuff. Things that pertain to football. But yeah, between Tom Brady and Joe Burrow, that's it. Those are the only guys that have beaten Patrick Mahomes in the playoffs, which is crazy. Just 2 guys. And I've said it, and I'm going to continue to say it. That's the team that has the best chance to knock off the Chiefs. I don't think it's the Ravens, even though they added Derrick Henry. I don't think it's the Bills. And maybe it's the Texans. I mean, we got to see let's see what the Texans do against the Chiefs when they play them. Maybe that's the first game of the year. We'll find out when the schedule comes out, which I think might be next week. So, right now, it's the Bengals that have the best chance. And, you got T. Higgins and Jamar Chase, two guys that are going to be looking for new contracts. And I think most of us can agree that Jamar Chase is going to be the one that gets the contract. T. Higgins, he's going to end up going somewhere else and getting paid. Now, is that going to be before this year, or is it going to be after this year? It's probably going to be after this year. They want to at least go on one more run with him. And then, they end up letting him go. But we'll see. And we got a comment from, I hope I can pronounce his name right, Natty Ron. It's a fact. Who day? Yeah. Well, now let me ask you a question. In the comments, do you think that T. Higgins is gone after this year? Or do you think that they're going to bring him back, sign him to a deal, and sign Jamar Chase to a deal as well? That's a question for you, if you want to answer that. Because it seems like they're going to let go of T. Higgins. He's going to go somewhere. Because he wants to get a long-term deal, and he's not happy with how the negotiations have gone. And he wants to get paid. But the Bengals, they want to keep Jamar Chase. They're going to prioritize that. This is T's last year. Okay. And it's unfortunate because T. Higgins is a really good wide receiver for them. But as I've said plenty of times, you can't keep everybody. You can't. You can't. It's tough because he's a very good player. They had to Tyler Boyd's going to go somewhere else. T. Higgins is gonna be gone. They got to pay Jamar Chase, and I mean he's one of the best wide receivers in the NFL. He's a top 5 wide receiver. Now T. Higgins, you probably put him in that top 15, maybe. Bengals, to be honest, have to keep Chase. That's why they draft. Yeah, that's true. They also did draft a receiver. Yep. I did bring that up last week as well. So that's T. Higgins is kind of on his way out, unfortunately. So, and wherever he goes, I mean, he's going to be good. He's dealt with injuries over the course of his career, but when he plays, he's very good. So, but it's a tough decision. But the Bengals, they're paying Jamar Chase. That's what's going to end up happening. Burton will fit perfectly with JB9. All right. I mean, listen, if you're high on him, that's good. That's good. So they're getting a good player. We'll see how that all plays out during the regular season. But yeah, I mean, this is kind of their last chance with T. Higgins. And I think if they're healthy, they can go on a deep playoff run. I do believe that. But again, it goes for every team as long as they're healthy. So, and when Joe Burrow went down, yeah, it was tough because that's, you don't want to see a star quarterback go down. We saw plenty of quarterbacks get hurt last year. I mean, I hate injuries. But it's part of the game. So, and the Bengals, give them credit. They almost made the playoffs with Jake Browning, but it wasn't enough. Jenkins fits the AFC North. I believe Bengals found something special. All right. I mean, it seems like you're very high on the Bengals draft, which is good. That's the defensive tackle they took. I believe. So, yeah, I mean, they did lose DJ Reader in the offseason. So, to the Lions. So they needed a replacement for him. They also drafted a tackle. So, I mean, and protecting Joe Burrow is very important. So, Bengals used all 10 picks to their advantage. I give it a solid B. Okay. All right. Well, like I've been saying, the Bengals, if Burrow's healthy, and it looks like he is, I mean, this team is going to be very good. Right now, and I know I talked about the AFC, but you look at the AFC North, I mean, it's going to be between the Bengals and the Ravens for the division. I think the Browns will be good. I think the Steelers will be decent. Those teams, but I think those teams are going to be looking more towards the wild card. The AFC North as a whole did very well and still will be the hardest division. I agree. I mean, I've said it before. That division is a gauntlet. Like I talk about the conference as a gauntlet. The division is a gauntlet in itself because you got 4 solid teams. Now, the Bengals and the Ravens are the top 2 because you look at the Browns and the Steelers. They got some question marks at the quarterback position. We'll see if Deshaun Watson bounces back from the injury, and we'll talk about him later in the show. And also the Steelers. I mean, you brought in Russell Wilson. You traded for Justin Fields, so we'll see how that pans out. I think Russell Wilson will do okay. The Steelers, they addressed the offensive line. They drafted a receiver, so I listen. I think they're going to be a team that's competing for a playoff spot. But we got to see. We got to see how that pans out. But we will talk about it in the next segment because we're going to take our first break of the show, and then when we come back, we're going to talk about should Mike Tomlin be on the hot seat. So we'll get into that when we come back from our first break of the show. So with that being said, stick around, and we'll be right back here on the GSMC Football Podcast.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign.
I wanna be the greatest. Everybody on the fake shit. I look around and feel like everybody is the fakest. I make this every day and I'm impatient, hoping one day I blow up from the basement. Statement, the top is so vacant. I don't hear shit that I think is amazing. Waiting for my day when I'm playing sold out shows where 1,000 faces. Hey, give me that crown, get in my way and to be put down. It ain't your place, all this my town. If I want that shit, then I'll get it right now. I'm losing it, the noose it fits, some losing shit, a stupid myth. You choose to live or choose to dip, you choose to fight or lose your grip and lose a gift.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind?
All right, and we are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And for the second part of the show, we're going to talk about Mike Tomlin and should he be on the hot seat. So this topic comes from Willie Colon, who made an appearance on the Craig Carton Show talking about Mike Tomlin and the fact that he should be on the hot seat. So this is what he said on the Craig Carton Show on FS1. He said, when you talk about his overall record, you talk about in 17 seasons, he has an 8-10 playoff record, only 4 seasons with playoff wins, and he's had some bona fide teams even with Ben Roethlisberger. The issue with Mike Tomlin right now is he wins games he's supposed to win, but he loses games he shouldn't lose. Go back to this year. He lost to the New England Patriots. The Arizona Cardinals had no business losing those games, and now Steeler Nation is frustrated because they're looking at an organization right now that is well above average, and then they lose bonehead games. I'm saying to myself, well, who are the Pittsburgh Steelers? Are they bullies, or are they the dweebs right now, he says. If you lost to the Patriots and the Cardinals, you look like dweebs. Look like the dweebs. That's an interesting way to put it. But I do get that. I do understand where he's coming from. Well, the dweeb part was a little foolish the way you know. But I do understand with what he's saying, because the Steelers over the years, they have played down to their competition with Mike Tomlin. You could go back to plenty games. I mean, one game comes to mind. This goes all the way back to 2014. They lost the game to Mike Glennon and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in Pittsburgh. That's a long time ago, but that's one game I could think of. There's plenty of games. I mean, look at the playoff games. You go back to 2017 against the Jacksonville Jaguars. I mean, the Jaguars put up, well, not the offense, because there was a defensive touchdown in that game as well. The final score of that game was 45-42. Blake Bortles. Now, Blake Bortles had a good postseason, but, I mean, you let the Jaguars come into Pittsburgh, and you let Blake Bortles just do whatever he wanted against your defense. Steelers were not prepared. Now, many people are saying the Steelers are looking towards playing the Patriots in the championship game. And in the comments, one and done all the time. Absolutely. Yeah, that's really what's happened. The last time they won a playoff game was the 2016-2017 playoffs. That was in Arrowhead against Alex Smith and the Kansas City Chiefs. They won 18-10, and Chris Boswell kicked 6 field goals. You know, it's been a long time. It's been a long time. And I agree. The Steelers have played down to their competition a lot. And those games against the Cardinals, who weren't very good last year, although they started, but with Kyler Murray, they started playing well. I mean, they beat the Cowboys earlier in the season. You know, they were a scrappy team, but yeah, Kyler Murray comes back. They were more of a respectable team, but you should have won that game regardless. And then you lose to the Patriots, who are awful. Now, I kind of blame that on the fact that, you know, Mitchell Trubisky was not very good. But also, I mean, Bill Belichick kind of owns Mike Tomlin. You know, so I wasn't very surprised by that. I mean, I took the Patriots with the points in my spread pool because I was like, I do not have confidence in the Steelers winning this game. And they didn't. You know, they came out flat in that game, and then they tried playing catch-up, and they ended up losing. But you know what? They still made the playoffs. But, again, one and done. But and you know what? My dad, who's a Steelers fan, that's why he hasn't been a big fan of Mike Tomlin. Because the fact that they played down to their competition. Like I said, there are plenty of games you could look at and say, the Steelers should have won that game. How do you lose that game? You go back to 2018 when they missed the playoffs. You know, they got swept by the AFC West. You know, you lost to the Raiders that year, who were not good at all. The Broncos, they were kind of like, they finished around 500 that year, but they weren't that good. You lost to them. You know, and that made all the difference because you barely missed the playoffs. I mean, again, I'm just naming a few examples. I could go back to a lot of these years that Tomlin's been the coach and say they should have won that game, they should have won that game, they should have won that game. But you know what? It happens. What's the NFL's best rival games? It's not that many to be real. No, I mean, you know, I used to, you know, when the Giants were good, you know, and they actually used to, you know, beat the Cowboys in Dallas. You know, it's not like that anymore. I mean, I think the best rivalries, you know, come from the AFC North, because, you know, you look at the Steelers. Yeah, they're not, like, offensively they struggled last year, but you know they did beat. I know they beat the Ravens the last game of the regular season when the Ravens sat their starters, but they still, you know, they still kind of own the Ravens a little bit. Despite the Ravens, you look at them, they should be the better team. But the Steelers still somehow find a way to beat them. But, yeah, so, again, back to the Mike Tomlin stuff. I think this is a big year. You know, I mean, the Steelers have made moves that you would have expected. I mean, they moved off of Kenny Pickett. In the comments, 3 straight years in the AFC Championship game. The AFC North is that shows you it's a good division. And who have been those two teams that have made appearances? The Bengals and the Ravens, who I believe are the top 2 teams in that division, which I think most people would agree with that. But yeah, should Mike Tomlin win the North and you're in the AFC Championship game? I guess that's how it's been recently. Yeah, I guess you're right. So if the Steelers win it, that means they're going to the championship game. I think Mike Tomlin should be on the hot seat because the Steelers this offseason they did things a little different. They moved off of Kenny Pickett. They they brought in. They have a completely different quarterback room. So and they made changes mid-season. They let go of Matt Canada, and now Arthur Smith is the full-time offensive coordinator. So I think Mike's seat could be warm. Yeah, I mean, there's got to be something. It's got to be something because they need to do something. If Mike Tomlin and the Steelers, if they don't win a playoff game, if they don't make a playoff run, or if they miss out on the playoffs, I think you might have to make a change. Now, there was talk that maybe they do make a change because after the Steelers lost those 2 games to the Patriots and the Cardinals, there was talk like maybe Mike Tomlin should maybe Mike Tomlin is on the hot seat. But then they righted the ship and Mason Rudolph came in, they won those final few games, they made the playoffs, but once again, one and done. Just Alex comments, can you shout out my friend Smudge? What's going on, Smudge? Anyways, but yeah, it's been a lot of one and dones, or just not even make the playoffs. And, it's going to be tough for the Steelers because, like we talked about before, they play in a gauntlet of a division. But the funny thing is, now context does matter, but they did sweep the Bengals, they swept the Ravens, and they split with the Browns. But context does matter. The 2 Bengals games, no Joe Burrow, both Jake Browning. Same initials, but different guy. The Ravens sat their starters the final week of the regular season. So, did they really go 5-1 against the AFC North? I mean, they did, but without a little bit of help. So, I mean, it's going to be tough. It's going to be tough, and this AFC is loaded. So, and like I said, they're going to be fighting for a wild card spot. That's where I think, that's how they're going to make the playoffs, is through that. But I like what they've done this offseason. Signing Patrick Queen I thought was a good signing. Improve the linebacker position. You address the offensive line. I think you did upgrade at quarterback to an extent. But is it going to be enough? Because, you're not getting the Russell Wilson from Seattle. You're getting the Russell Wilson from Denver. Now Russ has been, a couple years removed from, Seattle. He's not the same quarterback. Now, that doesn't mean he can't come in and produce. I think you're going to see something similar to his second year in Denver. Now, if he turns back the clock and he's the Russell Wilson from Seattle, well, that changes a lot of things. But I don't think you're going to get that. I still think the Steelers are going to be, a decent team. I think they're going to win 10 games, because that's just how it is with Mike Tomlin. But ultimately, I think it's going to be another one-and-done scenario. But we'll see. JB9 and Chase return to New Orleans. I mean, that's the team that's gonna be. If any team is gonna knock off the Chiefs, it's gonna be that team, and it most likely will be in a championship game. Baltimore looks scary, but we say that every time. Yeah, I mean it's true. Many people were hoping it was going to be this year, or last year, if you want to say, that they were going to knock off the Chiefs. You were the 1 seed, you had home field advantage, but the Chiefs ended up winning. And yeah, they got Derrick Henry now, and I'm really looking forward to that offense, seeing how that works with Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry in the same backfield. But yeah, got to run the ball more than however many times they did, 6 times in the championship game against the Chiefs. With Derrick Henry, you're going to have to get Derrick Henry the ball. So, which, is a no-brainer. But we do say it every time, though. I mean, last time they were the 1 seed, before last year, it was against the Titans. Lamar Jackson won the MVP, and, Derrick Henry ran wild against them, and they ended up losing. So, yeah, we'll see how it goes. But, yeah, this division, I mean, like we talked about before, it's probably the best division in football. Both North divisions might be 1 and 2. Because you look at the NFC North with the Lions, the Packers, I mean, I know you got rookie quarterbacks for the Vikings and the Bears, but I mean that division's got a lot of stars as well. I mean, I know for the Bears and the Vikings, like I just said, rookie quarterbacks, but the Bears with their offense and who they got on that side of the ball to go with Caleb Williams, and then with the Vikings, I mean, depending on if it's Darnold or J.J. McCarthy, yeah, it's J.J. McCarthy's a rookie, and we've seen what Sam Darnold is. But you look at the playmakers that the Vikings have. I mean, there's stars all over the place. So, so both North divisions are very good, and they should be very good in 2024. But let me know what you guys think, though. Should Mike Tomlin be on the hot seat? So before we go into our next break, just want to remind you guys once again to tip or donate and get your comments recognized. Make sure to go to the following link. That is gsmcpodcast.net. Again, that really helps the show, makes the show more interactive between myself, the host, and you guys, the viewers. Again, that is gsmcpodcast.net. And as always, it is displayed on the ticker at the bottom of the show segment down below. So when we come back from our second break of the show, we are going to talk about Kirk Cousins and the Falcons, his reasoning behind leaving the Vikings, and why, it's a little bit of a problem, since the Falcons did what they did with their first pick in the draft, taking Michael Penix. So we'll get into that when we come back from our second break of the show. So stick around, and we'll be right back here on the GSMC Football Podcast.
Looking for your daily fix of sports talk without having to pay for it? GSMC Sports Network is available on YouTube. Just search GSMC Sports Network. Get your fix of daily sports talk shows on YouTube, absolutely free. NFL, college football, NBA, MLB, MMA, UFC, fantasy football, and so much more. GSMC Sports Network has shows running all day long, with new sports shows starting every 2 hours. Just like on your favorite cable sports channel, except GSMC Sports Network is absolutely free. Just search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube to catch one of your new favorite shows, like the GSMC College Football Podcast, Chip Shot Football Podcast, Hoops and Heels Women's Sports Podcast, GSMC Basketball Podcast, and so many more. Check it out for yourself. GSMC Sports Network, now available on YouTube absolutely free. Search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube right now.
And we are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And for the third part of the show, we're going to talk more about Kirk Cousins and the Falcons. The Falcons taking Michael Penix Jr., obviously, with the number 8 overall pick. But I know there was an article that came out that said that talked about the reasoning behind Cousins leaving Minnesota. And so reportedly, he left Minnesota in part because they were upfront about their intention to potentially draft a quarterback of the future high in the draft. And yeah, so that's why he ended up leaving and going to the Falcons. And what did the Falcons end up doing with their high draft pick? Taking a quarterback. And Kirk Cousins was not made aware of it. And I know I talked about the two sides, how, the Falcons should be transparent, should have been more transparent and said, hey, this is what we're going to do, instead of just, we're going to take a quarterback. But then on the other side, you look at it and you say, well, Kirk Cousins did get a 4-year contract that was $180 million and $100 million guaranteed. So why should we feel bad? I get both sides. For me, I think they should have at least have been more transparent and said, hey, this is what we're going to do with our first pick. But, yeah, that's just how it happened. And Natty Ron says, Atlanta stole Denver's quarterback. They threw a wrench in the game. I guess that's what you meant to say. Yeah, I mean, because then Denver ended up taking Bo Nix with their first pick. But yeah, I mean that was the shock of the draft. He said Denver didn't want Bo. Well, that's who they ended up getting. And now he joins a quarterback room with Zach Wilson, Ben DiNucci, and Jared Stidham. So, that's the Broncos quarterback situation right now. And hopefully they do. Hopefully Bo Nix is their guy. Hopefully it is, but we'll have to wait and see. But with the Falcons though, and the whole Kirk Cousins stuff, yeah, I mean I guess I kind of feel bad for Kirk in the sense that you left because the Vikings were like, hey, we're going to draft your replacement. And they took J.J. McCarthy, who they really liked. But then he ends up going to another situation where you're told, hey, you're the guy. And then they're like, oh, we're going to draft your replacement. So, but at the end of the day, and it's cliche, but it's a business. I mean, the Falcons thought what they were doing was the best thing because they're planning for the present and the future. And that's what they did here. And Natty Ron says, again, if I'm Kirk, I'd be worried, one injury away. Yeah. I mean, I've said it. You're coming off of a Achilles injury. You're 36 now, or you're going to be 36. And they got their future waiting in the wings. So, if he gets hurt and Michael Penix comes in and he plays really well, yeah, you might not get your job back. I mean, one scenario I could think of is, or one instance I could recall is you go back to 2016 with Tony Romo and Dak Prescott. Now, the Cowboys didn't take Dak Prescott with the number 8 overall pick in the draft, but, he was a 4th round pick, I believe. And Romo got hurt, and they put Dak in, and they never looked back. Dak's been their guy. I mean, look at what happened with he roasted him the other night, but look at Drew Bledsoe. I mean, Drew Bledsoe gets hurt. Tom Brady comes in. And what happened? Well, Tom Brady's whole career. And he made the joke he made about when Brady went up and started talking, about Drew Bledsoe. It was that's one of the inappropriate jokes that were made from the night. I'm not going to get into it, but that's another instance though. I don't want to get into that, but I mean Drew Bledsoe and Tom Brady, that was another instance too. We could see that here with Kirk Cousins and Michael Penix. But this is the other thing too with Michael Penix Jr. He's got an injury history. So, you got Kirk Cousins, who is coming off of a major injury, who you gave him a 4-year contract to, with, like I said, $100 million guaranteed. And then you got Michael Penix Jr., who you drafted to be your future. He also has an injury history. So, yeah, the Falcons they're gambling. They are really gambling. And I listen, if everything pans out, I think Kirk Cousins is going to have a solid year. I think this team, you could look at them as being the favorites to win the division. I think right now it's between them and Tampa. Now, my allegiance is going to be with the Buccaneers. But, I mean, they should be able to win the division, the Falcons. They finished 7-10 last year, and that was with, Desmond Ridder and Taylor Heineke as your quarterbacks. But now you got Kirk Cousins, who's a massive upgrade. But he's coming off of a major injury. And is that going to affect him? I mean, I think I think so to an extent. But I still think Kirk Cousins is going to come out and have a solid year. Hey, Atlanta, don't do it. Indianapolis did and break your toy quarterback. Are you referring to Andrew Luck? Because, I mean, Andrew Luck got beat up from the offensive line that he had for years, and then they finally rebuilt it for him, and then he ended up getting hurt. Or no, he ended up retiring. Oh, Anthony Richardson. That's what I. Yeah, because he did get hurt last year as well. Yeah, I mean that's yeah, that's what I figured. But I just thought like break quarterback. I was like, well, Andrew Luck dealt with a lot during his time playing. Anthony Richardson's only been in the league for 1 year. But yeah, I mean he got hurt last year too. So, but at least like Anthony Richardson is young. I mean, Kirk Cousins is, in his mid-30s. So, I mean, Anthony Richardson still has his whole career against him. But you don't want Anthony Richardson going down the Andrew Luck path where he's constantly getting hurt. So yeah, it's going to be interesting. And I think, Kirk Cousins is handling it the right way. I mean, Michael Penix talked about it, that he already reached out to him. They had a good conversation. So, I think it'll be fine. But, in the back of Kirk's mind, he's got to be a little annoyed that, you didn't really let him know. And you kind of just went and drafted a guy that's not really going to be someone that's going to help impact the team this year. Someone that's going to impact the team's future. Where the Falcons had other needs. I mean, everybody was screaming and yelling about them taking an edge rusher, and they didn't do that. Well, at least with their first pick. But they really wanted to take Penix, and they went ahead and did that. So, it's that they thought they were doing the right thing. And you know what? And people have said this. That's someone they really like. They didn't just take a quarterback just to take one. They took him because they believe he's going to be very good for their franchise. So, and then back to with the Andrew Luck stuff. Natty Ron says, Colts choose not to build around him. Luck I'm speaking about. Yeah, I mean, they finally built that offensive line for him in, 2018. He had, he had that good season. They made the playoffs. They lost to the Chiefs, though, but... it's then he ended up retiring because the injuries just kept mounting up, and because he got hurt before 2019, he was dealing with an injury, and he just couldn't do it anymore. And it's unfortunate because Andrew Luck was a solid quarterback, but it's just he could not stay healthy because he took way too many hits. And for the Colts, you don't want to do the same thing to Anthony Richardson. You don't. But that's a different topic. But with the Falcons, and Kirk Cousins, they like I said, they should be a good team. And you're hoping that their weapons, live up to their potential now that they have hopefully stability at the quarterback position. Yeah, because even Natty Ron says if the quarterback situation works out for Atlanta, they could be sneaky good and win the division. Yeah. Like I said, I think if Kirk Cousins is healthy, I think they should be the favorites. I'm still gonna lean towards Tampa, but now it's more biased because for those of you that don't know, I'm a Baker Mayfield fan. I was really happy with his performance last year. So I might still side with Baker, but, the Falcons, I think right now you got to look at them as the favorites. The NFC South is not that physical, so Kirk Cousins should be able to survive a season. Yeah, I mean, you got the Panthers who are still... I think the Panthers will be better somewhat, but, yeah, I mean, I still look at them as the last place team. The Saints, I mean, I expect them to be competitive in this division. a lot of people think they're going to be awful. So, but I think they're going to be, kind of a middle of the pack team. But and Derek Carr finishes the year strong, so if he can carry that into next year, or this year, I think the Saints will be competing in this division. You got the Bucs, who are the South champions. But yeah, I think Kirk Cousins should have a good year, and I think the Falcons. Yeah, they're 1-2. I got the Bucs and the Falcons right now 1-2 at the top of that division. So, but we got to see how Kirk Cousins does. But I think he's in a good offense. You got two good running backs. You got Drake London, who hopefully this is really his breakout season. Kyle Pitts, same thing. Really with Kyle Pitts too, because especially when you look at fantasy, like people are taking Kyle Pitts high to be their tight end one, and he just has not really lived up to that. But with Kirk Cousins now, he should have a good year. They brought in a couple of other receivers as well, Darnell Mooney and Rondell Moore. So they got some speed on that offense. So we'll see how that all comes together. But it's just for Kirk Cousins, yeah, it's kind of a bad break. It's you leave Minnesota because they're gonna draft their future quarterback, and you go to the Falcons and they ended up doing the same thing. So let me know what you guys think about that whole situation. So when we come back from our final break of the show, we're gonna talk about. I almost clicked on the break instead of the changing the segment. So we're gonna talk about the Browns and their expectations for Deshaun Watson. They're expecting big things from his comeback after his season ended early last season. So that's what we will get into. More AFC North talk when we come back from our final break of the show. So with that being said, stick around, and we'll be right back here on the GSMC Football Podcast.
For the best and latest podcasts available anywhere, go to the podcast app on your cell phone and type in GSMC to access free content-rich podcasts on health and wellness, book reviews, sports, entertainment, relationships, social media, movies, technology, finance, and even weird news. Subscribe and download the GSMC Podcast Network's family of shows, available everywhere podcasts are found.
All right, and we are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And for the final part of the show, we are going to talk about the Browns, their expectations for Deshaun Watson going into the 2024 season. So let's get into that. So the general manager for the Browns, Andrew Berry, he made an appearance on the Pat McAfee show recently, and he talked about Watson and how he feels that Watson's going to have a big year. And yeah, so this is what he said. He said, "We feel very good about the transition. He is in a good spot mentally and physically. Obviously, he's been rehabbing the shoulder injury, but he is well on his way there and in a really good spot, or in a really strong spot. I think he's a lot more comfortable within the organization. We have a core group of guys on offense that now have played together for a number of years. We do expect to hit the ground running on that side of the ball, and I know he's very excited about returning to the playing field and getting over this injury. We do have high expectations for him and the offense this season." And I think they should, with the playmakers that they have on that side of the ball. He also did say, "I don't think it's uncommon for some transition or acclimation that has to be in the realm of possibility, but we feel good about Deshaun, like the trajectory we have seen, and do think he will have a big year." But yeah, you look at, the guys that they have. They have Amari Cooper, a veteran guy. It was actually, I saw an Instagram post, and I just can't believe that, that's true. But he's one of the players. This is going to be his 10th year in the NFL. It's crazy. But you got him, David Njoku. He really played well towards the end of last year. I know that was with Joe Flacco, but he's a solid player. They traded for Elijah Moore. You have him. You also have Jerry Jeudy, who they got from Denver, and they signed him to a big contract. And the other thing too is you hope Nick Chubb is another guy that he comes back and plays really well from his injury. Because if you got Nick Chubb, a healthy Nick Chubb, and, hopefully a healthy Deshaun Watson, well, hopefully a healthy Nick Chubb because, he's coming off of a significant knee injury. The Browns, they're going to be a good team. And they had one of the best defenses in the NFL last year, but that defense got shredded in the playoff game against the Texans. And oddly enough, that game actually was on, what was it, yesterday? Yesterday or 2 days ago? I think it was yesterday. It was on NFL Network. So I was watching a little bit of that. But yeah, it got shredded in that playoff game. Natty Ron says, I personally think he is overrated, to be honest. Cleveland should be looking to draft a quarterback for the future or in the future. It's clearly a major problem for that franchise. Yeah, I mean, I've said it. It's kind of like with Russell Wilson. I mean, Russell Wilson wasn't really hurt. It's just his play's kind of declined, not from injury, but it's just declined. Deshaun Watson has dealt with injury. Well, last year he dealt with injuries, but he missed a year because of all the stuff that happened off the field, and yeah, he just really hasn't looked good with the Browns, and like he shows flashes here and there, and you're like, okay, that's the Deshaun Watson from Houston, but the consistency's not there, and maybe it's different. Maybe he plays better, he stays healthy. I mean, the Browns came off of a big win against the Ravens, and Deshaun Watson was a part of that, and then he ended up missing the rest of the year. Natty Ron also says Cleveland will be good, I believe. Won't be surprised to see them steal a wild card. Yeah, I mean, like I said, I think that's where they got to aim for the playoffs, is the wild card. I mean, we haven't played any games yet, but because I just think the Ravens and the Bengals are going to be at the top. Cleveland made the playoffs with backup players that they weren't even 100%. Yeah, I mean, you look at their backfield. I mean, you had technically 5 different starting quarterbacks. So Jeff Driscoll started the last game of the regular season. You had him, you had Flacco, you had DTR. P.J. Walker, and Deshaun Watson. And that's why Kevin Stefanski won Coach of the Year. Because despite all that, the Browns still were able to make it to the playoffs. And I think they lost to the runner-up. I think he was the runner-up for Coach of the Year, and D'Amico Ryans. But yeah, I think Kevin Stefanski, I think that was, he deserved that. But I think people were saying, look, the Texans weren't supposed to be good, and they made the playoffs, they won the division. Won a playoff game, but they went with Kevin Stefanski, which is I don't think that was a bad pick. I think he deserved that, but yeah, I'm with you. I think that they're a wild card team, but they got to get that consistency at quarterback. If Deshaun Watson, can bounce back here and look more like the Deshaun Watson that was a Pro Bowl quarterback in Houston, then that just elevates the Browns. But if he's going to play more like he did before the injury, where he's throwing interceptions, turning the ball over, I don't really expect the Browns to do too much. At least when if they get to the playoffs. Like, I expect them to still win games. Like, even with Deshaun Watson not playing well, they still won games. It's just, and like we said, they played with 5 different quarterbacks, and they made the playoffs, so the Browns, I still expect them to be a good team, but got to see how the quarterback is, because he turned the ball over a lot. Turnovers are a problem, and he's just looking for that consistency. But coming off of a shoulder injury now, yeah, I don't know. But that trade with the Texans, at least for the Browns side, it looks like a disaster. Because they gave him all that money on top of it. And it just hasn't amounted to anything. Browns are still in the same spot. And, you look at what Baker Mayfield was able to do in Tampa. They won the division. They won a playoff game. Maybe you should have held on to Baker instead. But you can't go back. Cleveland's defense will carry them again. Yeah, I mean that's they were carrying them last year too. with all the quarterback stuff going on, quarterback changes. So, yeah, you're going to expect that to be the case again this year. So, if the offense, struggles. But we'll have to wait and see. I mean, it's a tough division they play in. It's a tough conference. But I like I've been saying, if Cleveland makes the playoffs, I think it's going to be through the wild card. But maybe Deshaun Watson comes out and he plays really well. And if he does, that's a huge boost for this team. But and he's got the tools around him. He's got a decent wide receiving core, and if Nick Chubb comes back, that's a plus. You got David Njoku. The offensive line is solid. Defense is solid. This team is good. But if the Browns are going to want to go far, and be elevated to new heights, I mean, it's got to come down to Deshaun Watson and his quarterback play. That's really what it's going to come down to. And if not, well, the Browns are going to have to look towards the future and try to maybe get a replacement. But they're not going to do that because they paid him all this money. They got to ride this out. But we got a long way to go. I mean, it's only May, but yeah, it's just that trade they made with the Texans is not looking good for them right now. It's not. But they're kind of stuck. They're stuck with this right now. But like I always say, we'll have to wait and see. So, but let me know what you guys think about Deshaun Watson. What are your expectations for him and the Browns for 2024? Again, they should be a good team. I think they could definitely be a playoff team. I mean, it wouldn't surprise me if you had every single team from the AFC North make the playoffs, because we almost had it. So, we'll see. Should the NFL do a conference realignment? I don't really have a strong opinion on that. I mean, what's wrong with what it's like right now? Now, we could see like an expansion in the future because, they have all these international games, and, it's maybe they want to put a team, overseas or something to grow the game. So maybe you do see that at some point, but yeah, I think the way it is fine. I don't think there's anything we really need to change. But like I said, don't really have a strong opinion on it. But I would say they don't need to do that. They don't need to do that. I actually do want to bring up though. So starting next week, there's going to be a little change in the format of the show. I mean, I did bring this up last week, but there's going to be an added segment. So there's going to be 5 segments. Still going to be an hour, but each segment's going to be a little bit shorter. Instead of typically it's supposed to be 15 minutes. Instead, each segment will be 12. So you'll have 5 12-minute segments. So you'll have, so the final part of the show will end up being the 5th segment of the show. But that'll be starting next week. At least for me. I think some of the other hosts, they might start a little bit earlier. They start this week and do that, but I'll start doing that next week as well. As well. So just a minor tweak or minor change, just an added segment. So I just wanted to bring that up. But that's pretty much it for the show for today. Natty Ron said AFC South and NFC East need to be fixed. The AFC South I think is going to be more competitive this year. The Texans with how they've improved the last couple, last year and now up. And what happened to my camera? What happened? All right, I don't know what just happened to my camera, but I think because I hit something. But I think the AFC South is going to be better You know, like the Jaguars are going to try to be better. Like, I mean, I think they'll bounce back from the collapse of last year, so you figure they're going to be better. You know, the Colts with a full year of Anthony Richardson, I mean, I think they should be competitive. Even the Titans, you know, like, I know they might not win a lot of games, but like they should I think they could be another competitive team. But I mean, I still look at them as like being a last place team right now. So, all right, we fixed the camera. Yeah, one thing I got to let you guys know if you're new here is sometimes like my camera will just like glitch out, and I'll have to switch over to my laptop camera because I'm using like a USB camera. So, but yeah, I mean, I now with the NFC East, Natty Ron, yeah, I mean, you know, I don't know when the Giants did beat the Eagles last year, but I mean, it's just the gap between them and Dallas and the Eagles. It's just it's not close right now. I mean, they somehow find a way. No matter what Washington does, the Giants always seem to beat them. So, and that's coming from a Giant fan. But I appreciate it, though. First time listening. I like the opinions and the information and opinions. I'm a diehard Bengals fan, just to let you know. Yeah, I kind of figured that when talking about the Bengals to start the show. But, yeah, no, I appreciate it. Make sure, you know, if anybody's new listening to the live stream, my show, at least, is every Monday through Friday, 10:30 a.m. Eastern Time. We go for about an hour. Like I said, every Monday through Friday. So make sure to tune in. Appreciate the comments. It's good to have some interaction with, you know, some viewers. You know, because, you know, at times, you know, it's just me talking to myself, you know, and I want that interaction with people. So I appreciate the comments. You know, it makes the show better. You know, it does. Like, you know, like I say when talking about the link, you know, it makes talking to the viewers makes the show more interactive. That's really what it's all about. So, like I said, if you're new here, show is every Monday through Friday, 10:30 a.m. Eastern Time. So make sure to tune in tomorrow because it'll be then as well. And make sure to check out all the other shows as well on the GSMC Sports Network. You know, basketball, sports, a couple of sports podcasts, baseball, other football podcasts, college football. We got soccer podcasts. We got golf, women's sports. We got it all. Hockey podcast as well, which should be coming out. But yeah, there's a lot. There's a lot. So make sure to tune into all those. You can find them on both YouTube channels. The GSMC Sports Network YouTube channel, as well as the GSMC Podcast YouTube channel. So, yeah, make sure to tune into all those shows as well. Give those shows some love. One final thing from Natty Ron. Been a Bengals fan since '86. Who day? I appreciate it. Well, I appreciate you commenting. You know, and listen, I'm high on the Bengals this year. So hopefully, you know, they do well for you. But I appreciate you joining the chat. Hopefully you join tomorrow, like I said, 10:30 a.m. Eastern Time. And yeah, that is all the time that we have for today. Thank you guys for watching. Like I said, we'll be back again tomorrow, same time, 10:30 a.m. Eastern Time. And until then, I'm Kenneth Gruenfelder signing off from the GSMC Football Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. Have a good day, and I will talk to you guys tomorrow. Take care.
Let's go. I wake up to a little bit of drool on my pillow, feel like it's gonna be a bad day. Yeah, I'm tired of shit, and the coffee ain't hit yet, damn, ain't that great.